In the shifting sands of 2012, a librarian prepared to move his city's greatest treasure. Not diamonds, not weapons, but ink on brittle parchment, words that had lasted empires. An army of extremists had sentenced him to burn. He would risk his life to see them survive. Pause. Visual, close-up on ancient, calligraphed manuscript page. Sound, gentle turning of a page, followed by a distant, gusting wind. This is a story of the man who smuggled 350,000 ancient books from the hands of Al-Qaeda. A true story of quiet courage against fanaticism. Scene: archival footage of Timbuktu, its iconic mud brick mosques against a vast desert sky. The city is bustling, vibrant. For centuries, Timbuktu was not a remote outpost, but a dazzling center of intellectual life. A crossroads of salt, gold, and ideas. Nestled in its libraries were nearly 1 million manuscripts, some dating back 800 years. These were not just religious texts. They were a universe of knowledge written in the golden age of African scholarship, groundbreaking works on astronomy, mapping the stars from the Sahara, treatises on medicine, detailing surgical procedures and herbal remedies, volumes of lyrical poetry, sophisticated legal theory, and rich philosophical debates. Visual, montage of exquisitely detailed manuscripts, diagrams of constellations, botanical illustrations, intricate geometric patterns. These pages were the memory of a continent, a testament to an intellectual heritage often erased from Western narratives. They proved that, while Europe was in its so-called Dark Ages, cities like Timbuktu were incandescent with learning. Scene: abrupt shift. Archival footage of militants entering Timbuktu in 2012. Jeeps with black flags. The atmosphere is tense, fearful. Then, in 2012, that light was threatened with extinction. Al-Qaeda-linked rebels swept across northern Mali and seized the city. They imposed a brutal interpretation of Sharia law. Music was banned. Ancient Sufi shrines, revered for centuries, were smashed with pickaxes. And the manuscripts, this vast library of human thought, were declared heretical, un-Islamic. Their guardians were told they would all be burned. History itself was scheduled for execution. Pause. Visual, a single, defiant face. Abdel Kader Haidara, a man with gentle eyes but a firm jaw. But one man refused to let 800 years of history turn to ash. Abdel Kader Haidara was not a soldier or a politician. He was a book collector, a scholar, a mild-mannered librarian. But heritage ran in his blood. He came from a long line of manuscript guardians, a sacred trust passed down from father to son. These books were not just objects to him. They were his ancestors, his identity, his soul. He knew that to lose them would be to lose not just the past, but the future. Scene: Haidara in a dimly lit room, speaking quietly but urgently to a small group of people. The mood is clandestine. With no army, no weapons, and no official backing, Haidara activated a secret network he had spent years building. It was a fellowship of the book, archivists, scholars, calligraphers, and ordinary families who understood the treasure they guarded. They became his co-conspirators. His plan was audacious, bordering on impossible, to smuggle 350,000 irreplaceable manuscripts out from under the noses of their would-be destroyers. It would be the greatest library heist in modern history, executed not to steal, but to save. Scene: reenactment. A moonless night in Timbuktu. The city is silent, under curfew. Sound: crickets, the soft crunch of sand underfoot. The operation began in shadow. The first phase was local. Under the cloak of darkness, Haidara's network went to work. They packed the delicate manuscripts, some no bigger than a postcard, others great, leather-bound folios, into humble metal footlockers. Hundreds of them. They moved with the quiet urgency of ghosts, spiriting these trunks through deserted alleyways. They buried the crates in the cool earth of their gardens, hid them in the cellars of their homes, and tucked them away in hidden alcoves behind false walls. For months, Timbuktu became a city of secret libraries, its most precious knowledge hidden just beneath the surface, while armed patrols roamed the streets above. Pause! Visual, close up on a hand carefully wrapping a manuscript in cloth before placing it in a metal trunk. But hiding them was only a temporary solution. The rebels were growing more suspicious, conducting raids, their threats becoming more violent. The books needed to get out of the city entirely. This began the second, far more dangerous phase of the escape. Scene: reenactment. Donkeys laden with sacks moving slowly along a dark, dusty road. The silhouettes of their drivers are barely visible. The smugglers used whatever means they could. At night, donkey carts, disguised as simple merchant transport, would trundle out of the city, their cargo far more precious than grain or salt. Young men, some barely teenagers, were paid to ferry the trunks to clandestine drop-off points in the desert. Every checkpoint was a moment of heart-stopping terror. A single suspicious question, a single curious soldier, and the entire operation could unravel, with fatal consequences. Scene: the vast, shimmering Niger River at dawn. A traditional Panasi boat floats downstream. Sound: water lapping against the hull of a boat. The most perilous journey was by water. Crates of manuscripts were loaded onto small river boats, sometimes hidden inside oil drums or sacks of charcoal, to be floated hundreds of miles down the Niger River. They drifted past rebel-held territory, praying the current would be swift and the patrols distracted. These weren't soldiers on a mission. They were librarians, fishermen, and teachers, risking everything. All the while, the occupation grew more brutal. People were being executed in the public square for infractions as minor as smoking a cigarette. The penalty for being caught saving these heretical books would be certain death. Visual: Haidara on a satellite phone, his face etched with worry. The connection is poor. Sound: static. This was a logistical and financial nightmare. The smugglers needed to be paid. Fuel was needed for boats and trucks. Safe houses had to be rented in the south. Haidara, a man of modest means, became a secret international fundraiser. From hidden locations, he made desperate calls, raising over $1 million in secret donations from archives and foundations around the world. Every dollar was a lifeline, funding another leg of the journey, another family's bravery. Pause. Visual: a montage of relieved faces as crates arrive safely in Bamako, the capital city. The trunks are opened, the manuscripts checked. For 14 agonizing months, this silent exodus continued. Crate by crate, boat by boat, history was smuggled to safety. By the time the French army liberated Timbuktu in 2013, the rebels made one last, desperate attempt at cultural annihilation. They broke into the Ahmed Baba Institute, the main library, and set it ablaze. News reports flashed across the globe. Timbuktu's manuscripts were destroyed. The world mourned. Scene: Haidara revealing the saved manuscripts in Bamako. A look of profound relief and quiet triumph on his face. But the world didn't know the secret. The building they burned was largely empty. The treasure was already gone. In a secure location in Bamako, 700 miles away, Abdel Kader Haidara stood among his rescued library. Of the 350,000 manuscripts in private hands that were targeted for destruction, his network had saved 95%. Not a single book was lost in the operation. And even more miraculously, not a single human life. Visual, slow-motion shots of the manuscripts being carefully preserved and digitized in Bamako today. Scholars studying the pages. Today, the texts are safe, being painstakingly preserved and digitized for the world to see. But their guardian insists their journey is not over. These books belong to humanity, Haidara says. Not to any one religion, not to any one nation, not to any one era. They are the shared heritage of the world, a reminder that knowledge transcends borders and ideologies. This wasn't just a story about books. It was a battle for memory itself. A quiet librarian and his network of ordinary heroes stood against an army that sought to erase the past, and they won. They proved that the most powerful weapon is not a gun, but a story. And the greatest act of defiance is not to destroy, but to preserve. Final shot, a single, ancient manuscript, open to a beautifully illuminated page. The camera slowly pulls back, leaving the book in a pool of light. It leaves us with a question that echoes through the silence of the library. What would you risk to save the world's memory?